please rise and lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presented an agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would move to, under letter 3A, to have each administrator contract be decided individually. So therefore, creating letters 3A.1, 3A.2, etc. For each administrator.
We move to vote for each administrator under letter 3A. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to separate and vote or consider each administrator. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Are there any other adjustments?
No, Mr. Chairman. May I speak to the previous adjustment in that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The recommendation would follow each individual as a recommendation to approve offering administrator contracts as presented for 2021, 2022 to all those individual contracts.
Thank you for clarifying
Thank you.
that. All right, so that motion has been voted on and approved. No other, we've adopted the agenda as adjusted. So now we move on to item C, public hearing regarding proposed future demolition of the Tech Ed building at Torrington High School. So I will go ahead and open public hearing. Do we have a presentation of this? Ms. Gates.
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that. In the packet, page 72, I included a memo. What we have, the THS Tech Ed building, it's the maroon stucco building between Torrington High School and the soccer field. That building is currently not used for instructional purposes. It's being used for storage. And the school facilities department looks at both capacity and condition when they're ranking buildings. That building is classified as very poor condition. And because it's not being used for instructional purposes, its capacity is ranked low. Mr. Kramer and I will be meeting with the school facilities department on Thursday for our annual facility plan. And one of the items in visiting with Torrington High School as well as the building committee last week was to look at demoing that building. It's necessary for this board to approve the demo of that building in order for it to proceed through the budgetary process with the school facilities department. We want school facilities department involved because they then will help with funding both of the demo as well as the abatement of the building.
Is there any public comment on this issue? Are there any questions from board members?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Trustee Sussman.
And unfortunately, I didn't make that meeting to the building committee. So my question, it is not used for instructional instructional classes or anything like that. But I do know that it is used for like a shelter for soccer teams, things like that, because that's right next to this. I mean, is there any plan to build any type of shelter for that field for teams?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Sacedo, my understanding in my past experience is that they have used the wood shop for a shelter
Okay.
for home soccer teams. And then they, that building is dry, meaning that there's no plumbing in it. So they use the restrooms in the high school, and they use the locker rooms in the high school. And if they needed to, the commons could be available if need be.
Is there any other comments, questions on the matter? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing, and that will be addressed later on in new business. New business 3G. Thank you. I forgot to mention at the start of the meeting, if there's anybody who wishes to speak during public forum, fill out the little slip at the door. Legal restrictions limit the amount of board comment and interaction during that portion of the meeting. Item D, information and proposals. Is there a committee report or a report from the board building committee?
I guess I'm the only one here that's on that committee, so I guess I don't know about our report. We went over a lot of things. This was one of them, what we just discussed. There's some other things within the district. There's some that need addressed, I guess, going forward. I don't know what all do you want me to say, Marcy?
If I may, Chairman Jesperson.
Yeah, please.
Trustee Sussex, they did an excellent job. We had a great opportunity to have a quality meeting about discussions about the list of major maintenance and have a strong list of items that were moved forward, along with further items that may come up later in future years. But at this time, we're not deemed necessary to make this adjustment, or more information was needed. And so I really appreciate the time spent by those trustees having that conversation, because it was really, it's a great process as we move through, and an opportunity for us to use funds that we do have a bucket of and help students and help our community in a positive manner, despite many of the conversations that we're going to have in the future regarding our finances and general fund. But we do have that obligation to utilize those funds that the state has allocated in a positive manner for our community and for our students. So I appreciate the time spent, and it was excellent conversation. Marcy, do you have anything to add or anything I missed?
The only thing I would share is that as we come into the coming months, you're going to be seeing proposals for engineers and architects to help with projects. We have some flooring projects that we're pricing, and there's going to be some different capital purchases that I try and make a note when the building committee has, already looked at something, so that you have an idea that 3 of your 9 members have taken a peek and prioritized it, and they're available to help speak to it as well. But I appreciate the time spent and their input as well.
Where do we stand on the lingual annex, or whatever you want to call
Vestibule.
it? Vestibule, okay.
That's another one of the challenging ones in relation to where we saw that number come in, and where we prioritize that at this time, and looked at the major maintenance. Right now, we have not set that up to be taken a look at for next year.
Okay.
For item 2, we did not give any homework to our student representatives, but I will be in contact with you. Ms. Patrick and I came up with some ideas, so we'll have more stuff for you guys to do going forward. Apologize for, it's been kind of a crazy month for us. Let's see, just point out that the artwork in the boardroom is from Torrington Middle School, so if you get a chance, please walk around and take a look. And I understand we have a presentation from Torrington Middle School. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to address each of you this evening. It's a privilege and we appreciate the opportunity. We're going to share some information this evening about standards-based grading. We've been into, so to speak, standards-based grading in Torrington Middle School for about 6 or 7 years. We started by doing a year to a year and a half of research and reading, studying, watching videos, listening to presenters that were brought into the district so that we understood the theory of it, because it's very easy to get lost in the details. For example, the idea of retakes. Retakes have nothing to do with standards-based grading. That's a decision separate from the idea of standards-based grading. So we have a slide here that I want to mention. So if you think about the term standards-based grading, each discipline in Goshen County, whether it's PE in 6th grade or art or Angela's course, which is 7th grade science, was asked to come up with the most important standards. And a standard is just a big chunk of learning. And we call it the top 10. Now, some courses have 8 standards, some have 10, some have 9. It didn't absolutely have to be 10, but each subject was asked to come up with the big standards. So this one is one of Angela's, who teaches 7th grade science at Torrington Middle School. The role of the mass of an object must be qualitatively accounted for in any change of motion due to the application of a force. That was written by teachers for teachers. We certainly wouldn't give that to students because they wouldn't have a clue what that was about. Below that, we have student language. And so we listed a couple of them. We have what's called success criteria. Success criteria are the building blocks that students need to master in order to be demonstrating proficiency on a standard. So you could see 2 of them there. The first one is, and when it says I can, that's the student self-assessing, the student keeping track of where they're at. I can apply Newton's 3 laws of motion. Students understand that, and they use that throughout the unit. I can utilize a motion graph to infer and answer questions about an object's motion. So this is student language, this is teacher language. And when we talk about standards-based grading, we're simply talking about the standards or the big learning targets for students in our school. Mrs. Ochsner has given you the basic overview of the research that we spent a year and a half on. Those are some of the critical components. For example, in standards-based grading, it's all about the students know and are they able to do the things that we expect them to do. So it talks about the fact that extra credit, which got me through a class or 2, I think, is not part of standards-based grading because it has absolutely nothing to do with knowing the basics of a course. And so we're not going to read that to you, but that was the basic theoretical perspective that we went at standards-based grading with. So I'll give you just a second to look at that. There are 15 fixes, so to speak. For example, we look at the most recent evidence of student learning. So if we give a pre-assessment and the student knows nothing, that's okay, all right? If they know all of it, that will be addressed in a different way. And Mrs. Ochsner will talk about that. Because we do have students that know what they need to know before we teach the unit. And in my opinion, those are some of the least well-served students in our school district. Because it's like, if I already know it, what am I learning here? But as a student goes through a unit, hopefully their learning increases, and the ultimate goal is for them to demonstrate either proficiency or advanced status for that unit. They track themselves as they go through here. This is the standard for that unit. So Mrs. Ochsner.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I am Angela Ochsner. I teach 7th grade life science, and I guess all science now. It started out life science, but this is my 9th year of teaching. I absolutely love teaching, and this is my 8th year working with standards-based grading. And standards-based grading is a hot topic. It always has been. I've been a part of just about every standards-based grading committee that we've created in the district since we've moved towards this. And it isn't without challenge that we approach standards-based grading. And I wanted to hand out the 15 fixes because that's one of the things we had to do 8 years ago, is we had to decide conceptually, is this what we believe in? And I wanted to hand that out today because I feel like there's still struggles with standards-based grading, but we maybe just need to take a look at this again and go back to this and ask ourselves, is this what we believe in with standards-based grading, and get on the same page conceptually. So that's why I handed this to you guys here today. So, awesome. So standards-based grading and reporting. Our school mission at Torrington Middle School is to ensure that all students are learning at high levels and developing habits to become productive citizens. And standards-based grading has 2 facets. And I think we oftentimes focus mostly on the academic side of standards-based grading, and we forget about the behavioral side, or what we call the affective side of standards-based grading. It really is a two, I guess the 2 horns on the same goat, so to speak. You have to have both of those together. And that's something that I think over time I've come to realize, and I wanted to share what I do in my classroom and what we do as a school at TMS to address standards-based grading in both areas. That's not to say that they're perfect. We're still working on it, but I think that we have a pretty strong handle on it and a pretty strong idea of where we need to go to make it even better. So the 4 essential questions posed by Do4 really guide us as teachers. Those questions are, question number 1, what is it that we want students to learn? That really is what has guided our curriculum, but also our behavioral side. The second question, how will we know when students have learned? Third question, what do we do when students haven't learned? And lastly, what do we do when students have already learned? I've spent a good chunk of my teaching career studying these. And in fact, I wrote my master's thesis on these 4 questions and how I answer those within my own classroom. So I feel qualified enough to speak about them here today with you guys. So with standards-based grading, it's important to take a look at these questions. First of all, what do we want students to learn? You have to have clarity. You absolutely have to have clarity, but not only teachers having clarity, the students need clarity as well. It's essential. So on the academic side, I think we've done a really nice job with this. We've been working on a guaranteed viable curriculum for 9 years now, and I think we're strong. We're working collegially to align that to ACT, to YTOP, and even as standards change, like they did in science, we're working to adjust. And I see that that's a strength of ours. Pre-teaching is also a way that I increase clarity in my classroom, especially for my students with special needs. They can be brought in for pre-teaching, and that helps those students with those extra needs with their clarity as well. So I do want to just kind of quickly jump ahead and show you what I do a bit in my classroom. So I call this my What Are We Learning Today wall. And on the wall, I have our entire curriculum for 7th grade science. You can see it's broken down into the different units. We have subunits, and then below those are success criteria. We actually place green check marks next to the units as we finish them, and then my yellow ribbon indicates where we're currently at. And this really helps increase student clarity and understanding of where we've been, where we're going, how our curriculum is connected. This is also a part of their science notebooks, so they keep track of how they're doing in their science notebooks, and they keep track of their progress academically in their notebooks as well, on their pre-assessments, formative assessments, and common assessments. So moving back to the last slide, there also has to be clarity for behavior. Okay, so one thing that we've been working to develop as a district is a social emotional learning curriculum, a curriculum that will actually run K-12. And it's been developed and it's being developed by the experts in our district, our school psychologists, our counselors. They're working to develop this. And just like a guaranteed and viable curriculum, I think something that we can continue to really kind of hone in on is this SEL curriculum and having a curriculum K through 12, a curriculum of skills that we want to teach our students to help them with their citizenship, to help them become quality, good people, right? So The other thing that we do in my classroom are classroom norms, and this is pretty common. These are set up by all of the teachers within our school, and these are students who create these norms. So they decide what they want our classroom to look like. So you can see here the two primary characteristics of Blazers is to be respectful and to be responsible. And so I asked my students at the beginning of the year, what does respect in 7th grade science class look like? And they have to give specifics. And then, what is responsibility in science class? What does it mean? What does it look like? They give specifics. And then we agree to this and we put our handprints on a banner to sign a sort of contract saying that we're going to abide by this. And if we have struggles in the class, we go back to these. If we have students that aren't getting their work done on time to the best of their ability, we go back to our responsibility norms and we talk about those. And we develop skills and strategies to help ourselves get better at that, just like we do in academics. So in addition to that, we also have something called good standing. And that's how we track the affective side, the behavior side. So we track students based on respect and responsibility. Respect is defined at TMS as allowing teachers to teach and students to learn. Responsibility is defined as getting your work done on time and to the best of your ability. So we track weekly, daily, really, how students are doing with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that next. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, how will we know when students have learned? So really, this is just based on assessment, pre-assessments at the beginning of the unit when we're talking academics to see what students might already know. Formative assessments, they can be formal or just a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side to see where students are at. Student self-assessment, which is extremely powerful. Students themselves take the time to see where they're at. And then common assessments are kind of our final gauge of that. So how will we know when students have learned? So here is an image of my stoplight data. This is how I keep track of how students are doing in the classroom before I place my information into Power Teacher. So you can see here, this shows the PA stands for pre-assessment. You can see how students are doing at the beginning of the unit. And sometimes I have students that are 4s. They come to me already knowing the information. And I'll talk about that towards the end of this presentation, what we do with those students. But you can see how they're starting in the unit. Everybody comes to the unit with background knowledge. Pre-assessments are essential. We have to figure out what the kids know when they're coming into us. From there, we can give our formative assessments. So you see the FA stands for formative assessments. We can pull students in for flex and reteach when needed. So you see that happening there if the student doesn't know the information. And then we get into our common assessments. We can reteach those and then move on from there. So that's how I keep track of what students know. As far as the affective side goes, how will we know when students have learned? We talk to small groups of students in homerooms. So we have homerooms of about 12 to 15 students, a pretty manageable group of students. And we're their homeroom. We take care of them. So we check their good standing at all times. We help hold them accountable. If I have a student that is down in responsibility for Mrs. Hespe's class, hey, why are you down in responsibility for Mrs. Hespe's class? And then that student is able to tell me, I'm behind on my IXLs, right? So that's more of a behavior. And so we're actually looking at the behavior, not what the student knows. So this is our good standing document. And this is how we keep track of students. I have the student names blocked out over here, but this is where you have the list of names. Every teacher gets a column up here, and then you can see they have a column for respect and responsibility. And we assess students on their respect and their responsibility. If a student is down in 2 or more classes for 2 or more weeks, they are ineligible. They cannot play in athletic events or participate in extracurriculars until they are able to get back into good standing. So our eligibility is not based on academics, because we do have some students that perform at their highest level sometimes at the 1 or 2 level. That's them working hard, trying their best. And we don't want to keep them out of extracurriculars because of that. We base it on behaviors, okay? Are they allowing teachers to teach and students to learn? Are they being respectful? Are they getting their work done on time to the best of their ability? Are they being responsible? If so, they're eligible. So you can see that's how we keep track of that. The third question is, what do we do when students haven't learned? As far as academics go, we have an academics flex each and every day where any teacher can access any student in the building. So if you look here, This is what our academics flex looks like. It's another nice Excel Google Doc. We have student names here, and then we can place our names next to the student names. If we need those students, we pull them in for the day and work with them. So that's really nice to have that availability. If the students aren't with us, you can see that sometimes they're in choir, sometimes they're in study hall, sometimes they're in leadership, sometimes they're peer tutors if they have shown that they're advanced in certain areas. So it's a really cool opportunity each and every day to work with students if they haven't learned. We also have reteaching and reassessment occurring during that time. So that's a time where we can pull students to the side, reteach a concept in a different way, and then reassess them and see whether or not they understand or have learned the information. On the affective side, we have homeroom good standing checks to see whether or not students are developing those skills and those habits to become productive citizens. We also have something called Success Club. So there's an issue that's been brought up with standards-based grading. What if students are doing their work, okay? We would argue as a school that that's a behavior. That's not what a student knows. That's a behavior, okay? If they're not doing their work, at TMS, we believe the consequence for not doing your work is doing your work. You're gonna get it done. It's just, you can do it now, or you're gonna do it later. So we have something called Success Club. Our academic flex is more for students who can't do the work. Okay, so they're struggling academically. Our Success Club is for students that won't do the work. And the way that we kind of hold their feet to the fire, so to speak, is we have some activities that can be done at that time, some extensions. And so students miss out on those and they have to go do their work if they don't have it done. So you can see here, this is a Success Club document, back up one. I have the student names blocked out, but you would list your students here. So we have 2 Success Clubs available. Then this means science, they're being pulled for science because they have work that they haven't finished. Math, language arts. So you can see each day we have the opportunity to pull students who won't do, who aren't getting their work done, and address those behaviors. During that time, it's a teaching time too. We talk to students about why it's important to do the work and get it done. And, we even go further into careers and we start talking about, developing those habits to be productive citizens and what it means to work hard and get things done right the first time. And it's not just a time to bring students in and punish them for not finishing their work. It's a teaching opportunity. Everything's a teaching opportunity. Then my favorite question, what do we do when students have already learned? This is one of my absolute favorite questions, because sometimes I feel like these students come to us and if we don't assess what they might already know, they kind of get left behind. So academically, if students come to us and they already know the information and we assess that on a pre-assessment, then we move into enrichment and extension projects, and it ends up being really awesome. And the coolest part about that is that if you give a pre-assessment to a student and you gauge what they might already know, it's available to everybody, okay? Not just the smart kids in the class. Everybody's a smart kid, but giving students a pre-assessment allows you to see what students know. I have students that are on IEPs that qualify for extensions and enrichments because they have background knowledge. And they've gained that in different ways, maybe through reading, maybe through, family jobs in agriculture. So it's available to everyone, which is really cool. There's also a potential for peer tutoring as well. So some of those students that come to us already knowing the information are peer tutors during flex time, and they're helping to teach other students. So it's a really awesome time. Now I wanted to show you guys an example of an enrichment project that I have a student presenting on tomorrow. So this student came to me, and this student has just a general interest in paleontology. And so when we got into our unit on adaptation and natural selection, they already knew what I was going to teach about fossils. They aced the pre-assessment. So the cool thing about that is they don't have to take the formative assessment. The pre-assessment is essentially the common assessment, so they don't have to take the common assessment. So it's not like they're being asked to do that work in addition to an enrichment project. Instead, they get to research something that they enjoy. So what I did is I called the parents. I had 2 students that qualified for enrichment in this unit. I called their parents. We met out at the rock shop. I got them a fossil, and then they had to become experts on that particular fossil and answer a whole slew of questions. And, I checked in with them from time to time to see where they were at. And this is the presentation that one of my students just created, and he will present it to his classmates tomorrow. And I'm showing you his name with permission from his parent, but this is really awesome. He picked an ammonite, and he became an expert at the ammonite. He's going to teach his classmates about it tomorrow. And the really cool part about that is that his classmates will ask him questions. He'll go back and answer those, and they're going to give him positive feedback. And that's just a really good feeling too for that student to get positive feedback about your work. So that's how in standards-based grading, I feel like we can answer that question of what's a 4. Okay, so this student was a 4 during the pre-assessment. Well, how do I extend their learning? How do I show that they've gone above and beyond? Do this project. Okay, that can become a part of his portfolio. He can take that and develop a science fair project on it, or go further. So that's how I've answered that question in my own classroom. Now, as far as affective goes, we have some really great options. If we have students that are exemplary examples of respect and responsibility at TMS, we place them into leadership roles. So we actually have a leadership class. They can, help teach other students about the skills needed to be productive citizens. So sometimes these students are making videos to share with homerooms. Sometimes these students are taking new students and mentoring them around the school and showing them how our school works and teaching those students about, what we do here at TMS. I'll give you a great example. Bo Bivens was in 8th grade. When he was in 8th grade, there was a new student that had moved in, and this new student said, "I'm not going to do that work." And Bo Bivens, being one of our leadership kids, said, "They don't let you get away with that here. You're going to have to do your work." And that's just a really cool example of how a student that already knew those skills stepped up and led by example. So, as far as standards-based grading goes, I think there are a lot of concerns with it, but I think we have to remember that it's not only just academics, it's affective too. And if we look at these 4 questions, these 4 essential questions, and answer those, I think we can all come together with a pretty good design for this and for standards-based grading. So thank you guys for your continued commitment to Goshen County School District, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I welcome any of you at any time into my classroom. It's very difficult in 10 to 15 minutes to try to summarize what has been happening for the past 8 years. So please, if you ever would like to come in and see this in action in the classroom, anytime, I'd welcome you guys in anytime. So thank you. Thank you.
I do have one, and I appreciate that you presented again this year that you do this pre-assessment, and if someone gets a 4 on the pre-assessment, then you give them this more enrichment to kind of challenge them further. I guess my first question on that is, how many teachers at TMS do that sort of thing? Is that consistent from grade to grade, teacher to teacher, or is it just something that you do?
No, I think because I work primarily with my 7th grade team, my 7th grade team does this. I think there are others throughout the building that do it as well. But it's something that I think we all have the ability to work on and polish, and even myself. I don't know if everybody's doing it.
It's not consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not something where we said you have to do this. Because the teacher has to want to do this. Not every teacher wants to go to Rock Shop and do the project.
Yeah.
Angela goes well beyond, as many of our teachers do. Do I hope and wish that it would be consistent? Yes. But I can't stand here and tell you that every teacher does exactly this. The expectation is that they will provide advanced opportunities for students, but it may not look as rich as what she's done.
Okay, and I appreciate the honest answer there, because it actually leads into kind of my next question, and it's, so the pre-assessment is graded, they get a 4, so essentially they've got their 4 for their assessment.
Yeah.
So, and they don't necessarily have to take the common, but in those classrooms with those teachers that maybe don't have these enrichment type projects, do they still take the other assessments along the way, or is it just you got 4, you're good to go?
Yeah, so again, I'm not sure about the consistency with pre-assessments. I think that's something that's determined collegially. As a collegial team, we decided that, we want to start off with our common assessments. We want to hand that to students and see what they know right away. And so there's that consistency. If they ace the pre-assessment, which is the common assessment, then yeah, they don't have to take any other assessments, but they need to enrich their learning and move on. So I'm not sure if other teachers are doing that consistently. I think I can speak for science, saying that yes, it's happening 6 through 8.
Yes. So I guess my last question then along those lines is, how do we make sure that those students who ace the pre-assessment, that they don't digress?
That they don't digress.
Yeah, so in your classroom, you have the example of what we do to kind of make sure that we're enriching their learning.
Yeah.
But even so, what sort of things are in place to kind of ensure that if we were to give them like a final assessment, would they still be at a 4?
Yeah. So the enrichment projects that I have set up include the success criteria, answering the success criteria that we discussed. So for instance, this student's project, okay, here, will also address the success criteria. The success criteria for this unit is I can describe why fossils are important to biologists. So he is doing that within his presentation, but he's also going above and beyond. He's placing the fossil on a fossil record, on a timeline. He's talking about modern day organisms that may be related to it. So he's already actually kind of getting in or touching into our next unit on taxonomy. So we incorporate the success criteria that we still want the students to learn, but we push them a little bit farther as well to make sure that they hold on to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question, and I missed this. You had mentioned that TMS has been progressing along this on 8 years now.
Yeah.
How long have you been at TMS? I probably missed.
This is year 9.
Year 9.
Yep.
Year 1. How did you feel about this process?
You know,
did your undergrad work or graduate work prepare you for your first year in this?
Well, you know, I had a semester-long class on assessment. In that class at the time, we didn't talk about standards-based grading. And to be honest with you, when I first saw it, I was scared. It was something I hadn't been taught. It was something I hadn't experienced in my student teaching. And I think a lot of the teachers at TMS, looking back now and being reflective, would say, we didn't want to do it at first. You know, it just didn't feel right. You know, it's not what has been done time and time again. But I think if you talk to any teacher now at TMS, they wouldn't go back. And the reason for that is we see the value in it. We see that students understand what they're supposed to be learning. It's not, you know, in my class anyways, we're doing a lab to do this and students have no idea why we just did that lab. Every single day in class, I reference our success criteria. This is why we're doing this. This lab is going to help us understand this. And so it's something that definitely was kind of, I guess, not something we were very excited about at the beginning, but now I don't think we would go back.
And that's part of why, Mr. Kramer, it was so important for us to understand the theory.
Yeah.
Because if you start with, we're going to change the grading scale and how many retakes do you get, those are details that need to be worked out at the end. But if you don't understand the theory, you get lost in the details, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we spent a considerable amount of time. I think teachers by the end of the year and a half were like, we'll do anything, okay? We get it. We don't need to keep doing this, but without the theoretical base, I don't think it would work very well.
You get caught up in the logistics if you don't get that conceptual understanding down first and you don't agree upon just the theory behind it. You know, I'm really grateful that we started with this first because we had critical conversations. We had introspective conversations about our own experiences in education in regards to these fixes. And ultimately we decided, yeah, we agree with these 15 fixes. So what we're doing right now isn't working. We have to change our system. So.
But I would, okay, so I'm going to go to a word that you used that I have a little bit of difficulty with because of the fact that, okay, and it's the word consistency, okay, because the thing is a lot of times, you know, again, going with the thinking that if you're consistent, everybody has to be doing the same thing all the time. So I understand the whole, I understand this, and yes, I think it's great, and I think that having kids understand exactly what they need to do to be able to meet that standard, I think that's great as well. But I go to the fidelity of making sure that those things are being followed through with, and I guess my thing is, I understand everybody can't be doing the same thing, but is the fidelity of the concept what's being kept? Because that's where I think a lot of parents say, okay, I just don't understand how come your class is doing this, but another class is doing this, and another class is doing this. It's not going to be consistent.
Yeah.
But is everybody keeping faithful to, okay, this is the standard? And because I'm going to be very frank, a couple of years ago, I asked, okay, so I had a grade that was, and again, I'm going back to a couple of years, where I asked, okay, if they're meeting the standard, okay, I'm not understanding why their rubric was not where it was supposed to be. And I wasn't being able to actually be given an answer to that.
Yeah.
So why is that? I mean, if the standards are clear,
Yeah.
why could I not be told what?
The standard was
Right.
from the student? Yeah. That's kind of the struggle too when people talk about the GVC. I mean, we're saying we're guaranteeing that we are going to teach your students these concepts this year, that they're going to have an understanding of these standards this year, right? That's what a GVC is, guaranteed viable curriculum. That's what we have in place. And so, there will always be inconsistencies. So I apologize if I use the term consistency in a different way. I think we try our best to be consistent. I know in science, we go over the units at the same time. We share labs, we share activities. So this was really successful in my class. Go ahead and try this. This is all data-based too, if we're talking academics. We'll look at data. My data is lower than Mr. Giffords at Lingle. Why is that? What did you do in your class? What helped your students out? I think there's always going to be some inconsistencies because we're different people, and the art and science of teaching is that sometimes we use our professional judgment, we teach things differently, but as far as consistency goes and helping students understand what it is they're supposed to learn, I think it's just that clarity piece. It's allowing them to self-assess, and I think that's something that we can continue to build on and continue to work on as we share documents, as teachers. Here's what I use to help students track their progress in their class. Here's how I help them build clarity with what it is that they need to know and understand. I think it's just that collegial work that we're doing to try to develop that consistency, because that is the goal, that students are getting the same high quality education at all of our schools, right? That students are learning at high levels at all of the schools and developing those habits to become productive citizens. So I think it's something that's constantly in the works, but we aren't robots, so it's not going to be exact. But I do understand what you're saying, that clarity piece. And we do share ways to help students really be clear on what it is they're supposed to know and be able to do. So.
Oh, real quick, I have a question for Mr. Heyman.
Sure.
You guys have implemented this standard-based grading, you said, for 8 years now. One quick question. The high school has just recently started in the last year, this year. Has any of the administration from the high school contacted you personally prior to this year for advice or guidance on
I can tell you
implement?
that, I don't know if it was last spring or last summer, but as an administrative team, we spent a lot of hours talking about standards-based grading. So, I don't know, Mr. Kramer can help me, but we had 3 to 4 meetings, lengthy meetings, talking about standards-based grading. The only concern I had again was, let's not get lost in the details, because if you get the cart in front of the horse, which is detail stuff, the theory gets lost. And so we did have very in-depth discussions. Did I talk to Chase Christensen specifically? No. But did I talk to Chase Christensen as part of our meetings? We all shared ideas. Every administrator knows, I believe, quite a bit about standards-based grading. So we spent a lot of time developing a document that I think Mr. Kramer shared with you, was it spring or summer? Yeah. So yes, we did have discussions about that, but it was at the administrative team level. That answers your question.
Thank you.
You bet.
Final question, I'm sorry. It was a hot topic, you're absolutely right, and so therefore it elicits a lot of questions. 2 questions, one probably for you as a teacher, Ms. Ochsner, and thank you for presenting to us this evening, is do you solicit feedback from the next grade level of were my students prepared for for your class?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I'm constantly talking to the 8th grade science teachers. We actually will take our science notebooks. I'll take the science notebooks of this year's current 7th graders and I will hand them to Mr. Gordon next year so that students have all of their notes and then they just build on it, because our units, we're a spiraled curriculum, we're integrated. So we teach essentially the same exact units, the same exact time each year, but our success criteria become progressively more challenging as the years go on. They build on each other. We've just developed within the past 5 years some really strong vertical alignment and integration in science. So absolutely, and especially with our 8th graders being tested in science YTOP, we as a 6th grade and 7th grade science teaching team, we're constantly, you know, do these kids, do they feel like they're building on it? Do they remember the things that they're learning from last year? And I will say that in science specifically, it has been better since we've integrated, because before we would have, for instance, life science being taught in 7th grade and they wouldn't see life science again until 10th grade. That's a long period of time to try to recall information, especially pretty detailed, you know, concepts. So since we have integrated, I feel like we're seeing that students are remembering this. We of course have a lapse in the YTOP assessment after last spring. So this spring we'll be telling to see a little bit more whether or not our integration is successful. But I would say that it has been for the best for students, specifically speaking in science. So.
You answered my second question through your statements. Thank you.
Yeah.
One other detail that Mrs. Oshner and I talked about, and we don't want to belabor the point, but do you find students blow off the first test to take the second test?
No.
So they know what the answers are? Is that common?
No, I don't see students doing that. And, you know, students understand that they have the opportunity to retake, but we've built so strongly into our norms this concept of responsibility. So, you know, giving your best effort, getting your work in on time, doing it to the best of your ability, that it's a part of our curriculum. It's a part of what we do. And when students take assessments, they take it seriously. They do try really, really hard on it, even though they know they have another opportunity. I've never seen a student just go through an assessment and completely blow it off. But again, that's part of, you know, that other side of our mission statement, developing habits to be productive citizens. I mean, it's from day one. We start talking about, here's what it means to be respectful. Here's what it means to be responsible. And we're constantly talking to students about what that means too. You know, if I see with the first assessment that, you know, a student isn't giving their best on an assessment, then yeah, I pull them aside and say, hey, you've got more than this. You know, what's going on here? Talk to me a little bit. Let's talk about why it's important to try our hardest on the first, you know, assessment. If this is a job and you go in and you're not getting your work done, you're going to get fired someday. I mean, we have those conversations and it's a teaching moment. But I haven't had a student just blow off an assessment. And with work completion too, you know, if a student is not wanting to complete their work because the grade that's given is our common assessment grade, then again, we address that with Success Club. You know, the consequence for not doing your work is doing your work. So you're going to do it now, you're going to do it later. You know, and we even have things in place where, for instance, we have a student right now that is very behind in their math work. And so they've been a part of Success Club. They've been getting their work done. But our math teacher will not give that student the common assessment until that work is done, because that work needs to be done to prepare for that common assessment. So I think a lot of that is controlled through behavior and through teaching on that affective side.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody for the public forum? Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that trustees wish to pull from the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion passes. Old business. Item A. Consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 5152.5, children or youth in transition, as presented on second and final reading, including a proposed revision to the exhibit. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving proposed revisions to district policy 5152.5 as presented on second and final reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Item B, consider approval of proposed revisions to previously tabled district policy 5153, student suicide prevention, as presented on first reading, including the deletion of current exhibit 1 and addition of new exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving proposed revisions to district policy 5153 as presented on first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. On to new business, considering the approval of offering administrator contracts. First one we have is Diana Sims. Can I have a motion? Sorry, and the recommendation is approving offering a contract for the 2021-2022 school years. Now can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to ask for discussion for this, or these items. All those in favor of approving a contract for Diana Sims for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve offering administrator contract to Tyler Forshinger?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving offering an administrator contract to Tyler Forshinger for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve offering administrative contract to Mark Heyman for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving offering administrative contract to Mark Heyman for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. We have a motion to approve offering an administrative contract to Jim English.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of offering an administrative contract to Jim English for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve offering an administrative contract to Chase Christensen?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving of offering an administrator contract to Chase Christensen for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve offering an administrator contract to Randy Epler?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Excuse me. All those in favor of approving and offering an administrator contract to Randy Epler for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Can I have a motion to consider approval of offering an administrator contract to Corey Gilchrist?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approval of offering an administrator contract to Corey Gilchrist for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
The motion passes. Can I have a motion for the approval of offering an administrator contract to Trina Nickel?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the approval of offering an administrator contract for the 2021-2022 school year to Trina Nickel, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Can I have a motion for the approval of offering an administrator contract to Tim Williams?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the approval of offering an administrative contract to Tim Williams for the 2021-2022 school year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Can I have a motion for item B to consider the approval of offering a contract to Marcy Cates as the district business manager?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's see, this is, I guess I can ask for discussion on this one. Okay, all those in favor of approval of offering a contract to Marcy Cates as the district business manager for the period July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2022, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Item C, consider approval of proposed new district policy 5101, kindergarten readiness, as presented on introduction and first reading. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may speak to this, in recent legislation passed last spring involving kindergarten readiness or kindergarten age, there had been legislation, or is legislation currently enacted, that called for the movement of the date of fifth birthday to be August 1st. In that legislation, there is pieces that indicate that a district must have a policy related to this. I would welcome Trustee Patrick or Trustee Bullington, who was able to attend the meeting in regards to our committee and speak to the process that we went through. If you would like to share with the other trustees what we came up with as a group, I think it is a strong process, and I appreciate their involvement in that conversation.
I'll defer to the early childhood education specialist. We had a great group of people in there, many kindergarten teachers, many administrators. If they weren't there, they were on a Zoom meeting, and we talked a lot about what is expected, what's considered mature. That word was in question. And as Mr. Kramer says, that is the word that's actually in the law. So that's why we continued using it's hard to decide what is mature, but that's what's in the law, so we went with that. After many discussions, we all decided that academically is where we start and set a standard for academic readiness, both math and, gosh, I can't think, math and reading, right?
Yep.
And set that 40% standard on an assessment for that. If they failed to meet that standard, we wouldn't go on with the process. That they felt that the teachers all felt that if they didn't meet that standard, then there wasn't any need to move forward with it. They were not ready. If they do meet that standard, then we will talk to preschool teachers, parents, and follow on with the assessment, going more into social emotional issues with children. And because let's face it, that's particularly why kids are struggling if they have a late birthday, is the social emotional aspect of it. And so felt that this is the way to do it. And we had a lot of great discussion, and I think we came up with a document that will allow teachers and staff to really assess if the child is ready to come to kindergarten.
And just to reiterate, so everybody this is kind of new, this is only for students whose birth dates would fall between or on August 2nd to September 15th. September 15th, prior to legislation, was the birth date that students had to turn 5 by in order to be eligible for kindergarten. That new date is August 1st, and so that, in effect, brings up the reason and thought process for the readiness assessment.
Any other questions? I think Mrs. Bullington covered everything. And we have had already requests in the district, so the process needs to be spelled out very quickly.
And the one thing, even as I sat in on that committee meeting, I had to do it virtually, but the one question I had was, that was confusing to me at first, was that there's an option between those days, that we aren't just moving the date for the sake of moving the date, is that we're going to give kids an opportunity to meet that criteria with that, with that change of date. So it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be able to attend kindergarten, but we're going to give them that opportunity to.
That's correct. Yeah, and actually, in the state of Wyoming, parents, the age of attendance is not kindergarten, in which a parent would have to choose. We actually can work with a parent in any choice they make as a family in regards to that.
Any other questions or discussion?
Is it still out there that they possibly will do away with that option?
There is existing legislation. So in the existing the legislation last year, as we know, coming in a week, our world kind of changed and was upside down. That was kind of what was occurring also legislatively. So within that first piece of legislation, prior to any amendments, was a statement that it was August 1st. There was no readiness assessment. Through some changes in the legislation, it did get changed. Now, there has been an introduction of new legislation for this year to take away that readiness assessment and just say August 1st. So there is the potential, even with this policy, at the end of the legislative session, it may be determined that this is null and void, that it is just going to be August 1st. So just so everybody's aware of that, thank you for speaking to that.
All those in favor of approval of the proposed new district policy 5101 as presented on introduction and first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Item D, consider approval of purchase exceeding $5,000 for the purchase of THS music room cabinetry from Winger in the total amount of $19,003 funded through capital construction. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, approval of purchase of music room cabinetry for Torrington High School from Winger in the total amount of $19,003, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Item E, consider approval of purchase exceeding $5,000 for the purchase of TMS musical instruments from Taylor Music in the total amount of $8,143 funded through the TMS building budget. Can I have a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Kate, when you say building budgets, and I apologize because I'm just drawing a blank, is that general fund, kind of the block fund grant?
Chairman Jesperson, that is general fund. Each of the schools are allotted a set amount of dollars based upon their projected student population for the next year.
Sure. I appreciate it. It's the phrasing building budget, at least for me tonight, was thrown. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of a purchase of music instruments for Torrington Middle School from Taylor Music in the amount of $8,143, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion passes. Item F, consider approval of contracting with Home and Lawn Services LLC for the 2021 District Weed Control Sterilant and Fertilizer application. Total amount of $58,260.92. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Second. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Ms. Cates, can you remind me what fund that comes out of?
This, the weed spraying comes out of general fund. I apologize for not including that on here. As I mentioned, I believe there may be an opportunity for some cost reduction as well. As part of this, they're asked to price four different categories, fertilizer, both on turf fields as well as non-turf fields, and then bare ground and sterilant applications. And in that, they're also asked to price for individual unit applications. So I believe there may be some potential for cost savings in the fertilizer piece of it.
And so as it comes from the general fund, do we split that up between locations then, or is there like a administrative one that we're?
There's a district building and grounds that it comes from.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of contracting with Home and Lawn Services LLC for the 2021 District Weed Control Sterilant and Fertilization application, the total amount of $58,260.92. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Item G, consider approval of proposed demolition of the Torrington High School Tech Education Building pending the approval of the School Facilities Department. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just when would we be looking at receiving that approval? How long is that going to take?
Unfortunately, this could be 2 years out, dependent upon approval of the biennium budget. There is a hope that there might be some additional demo money. And by getting our approval in, we do hope that we might be considered for that additional money.
So would that change the, yeah, never mind. I got it. Thank you.
And then at that point, that's when we start getting bids for that process. So we're just kind of waiting for the school facilities department to decide on all of that piece.
Correct.
That was my question.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of the proposed demolition of the Torrington High School Tech Education Building pending approval of the School Facilities Department, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Item H, consider approval of early resignation notification incentive for certified and classified staff members as proposed. Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve this proposal.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? So this is different than what was already in place by adding kind of, I guess,
That is correct. So in the previous policy that you're referencing in regards, and that was only for certified staff, that policy on a submission of written notice of intent to resign was available to only certified staff, and this one encompasses classified staff and the assistance that it provides the district, both in the possibility of savings, referencing our current financial situation, along with potential to have that knowledge and information prior to the summer and the continuation of benefit packages that may remain if that resignation is not tenured until August.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of early resignation notification incentive for certified and classified staff members is presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. All of our new business. Item G, topics for discussion. Is there any items that trustees wish to bring up? So I have, I guess, one question, and really Mr. Kramer, and it stems from our meeting, budget work session we had. So you suggested that we tentatively plan a meeting later this month as we learn more about what happens with proposed legislation.
I think as in our listed on our future meetings, I would actually advocate for changing that work session to a regular or a special board meeting to have further conversations centered around budget and possible reductions that need to take place in order to, if we feel at that time, we can either have discussion related to possible reductions, or if it is a suitable time that the legislation allows, we can take action at that meeting, which allow us to do that. The earlier the better, if deemed possible.
Is there, somebody have a comment that's joined us virtually? No, okay. So, I guess is everybody agreeable to changing that meeting on Tuesday, March 23rd from a work session to a special board meeting so we can take action? You know, seeing a consensus, so we'll plan it that way. Yeah, that's really my only question. I want to bring up. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, thank you. So item H, future meetings. Continue to check your schedule for school visits and rotations and visit with those principals. There was also, Ms. Fritzler handed out this evening information on the 2021 legislative forum posted by the WSBA and the Wyoming Association of School Administrators, March 14th and 15th at the Cheyenne Little America Grand Ballroom. Ms. Fritzler asked that if you plan on attending to let her know, because there's some registration that needs to happen. Do you know when you need to have that information by?
Probably by the 11th.
By the 11th.
Sure, have to make packets and everything, but the sooner the better.
You know, there was some discussion on some of this being held virtually. This handout doesn't really talk about that. It was in one of the emails. Is everybody getting the WSBA email? Okay. So I guess refer to that also. Has anybody ever gone to one of these? I haven't, so I can, I think considering where we're at, we've, and I've shared with you my dialogue with our legislators. I think this being hosted by the WSBA and the school administrators, it just gives an opportunity to have further discussion about those things and see where we're together. So, if you have the ability and the desire to attend, I strongly encourage it. Yeah.
Chairman Jesperson, I would also encourage you, I don't know if you've had an opportunity, but the Wyoming legislature is doing a fantastic job right now in the committee meetings. And I had an opportunity to watch in the last couple of weeks, and they are still available on YouTube. So the education committee is quite valuable in gaining information related to other boards testifying, superintendents testifying on different legislation that's out there. And it was very informative for me as I watched last Thursday, and they are recorded, so you can go back and actually access some of that information. And I think, that's one of my goals, I know, to become more active in future years legislatively and testifying, and I hope to include board members in that process. And so when I come to you in the coming years and asking you to present to me with me, you can at least have the knowledge of what that entails for those board members who have done that. But I appreciate the work that's been done by those committee members on all those committees, because it's not just education that you can access. And it's important for us to be aware and keep abreast of that legislation. So I would encourage that and encourage that active participation.
I do see where under the Monday they talk about as health orders allow, so I guess that's something we'll have to be aware of, I guess. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I guess it's probably not, but this just jogged my memory. Do we we know if the school boards association and or the district is taking a specific stance on Senate File 67, which amends carrying weapons on school, well, any public meeting?
I have reached out to the school board association and not heard back as whether they took a stance on that legislation.
Thank you.
So continuing under for future meetings, we just discussed a special board meeting on Tuesday, March 23rd at 7 o'clock. And the next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, April 13th at 7 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, before we move on,
Yes.
I don't know exactly how much flexibility we have with that Tuesday, March 23rd, because I know that this isn't your issue, but that's my anniversary. So you all can have a meeting, but I'd like to be there when whoever's going to tell my wife that I won't be there. So I don't know if there's any flexibility with that.
So we could potentially move that to the following week to, I don't know if that creates any issues.
I mean, yeah, Monday or Tuesday of that week, or Monday or Thursday of that week, or the next week, whatever would be more beneficial for those individuals.
22nd, 23rd, or even.
Mhm.
Is there a strong desire for one of those dates over another?
And nobody's anniversary.
I've been here for my anniversary
Have you?
several times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. if it's the case.
I would
I've been married
prefer
11
not to
years.
do the 22nd.
So this is-
I'm gonna take the week off and we'll just be coming back to the office that day.
Okay. So 22nd is off the table. Because I think if we're going to be talking about budget stuff, it's important in this case. So. 25th? Let's do, we need to take action. No, okay. So that will be Thursday, March 25th at 7 o'clock. So hopefully we'll be recovered from all the celebrations. Okay. Item I, Superintendent's Report, Mr. Finley.
Thank you, Chairman Jefferson. I'm just going to share with you the attendance data relating to this last month. So the color coding for this month deals with the previous month. And the green indicates that the enrollment at that building has increased. So as you can see, LaGrange Elementary did have a slight increase, and all of these were very minimal. And I'm just going to kind of just scroll through because you can see a number of these. The yellow and also green, none of them were more than 3 student difference. So everything remained the same. We did increase 2.09 ADM this last month. So that does include with all the movement that there were 2 more allocated students to Goshen County School District. And so that is always positive as we increase those. And really it's just based on, some buildings having, more increase than others. You can see that it is kind of interesting. In some of the buildings, we are now approaching where the previous year was, where you noticed in previous illustrations that we were typically significantly below last year just due to some of the COVID pieces that we were facing. And so seeing those numbers increase and exceed where we were at last year is encouraging. Just the next item that I had was an update on our COVID vaccinations. Our first group who had their first shot are set up for their second shot on Thursday, a group of, I believe, if I remember correctly, 58 within the district. And then within the next week and a half, we will have all of our staff members who wish to be vaccinated completed with their second shot. And that is some encouraging news. And again, I want to just say a big thank you to Banner Health for they have now completed over, I believe it's 110, just over 110 of our staff members, and also public health. Public health and Banner Health collaborated to figure out how to get all of our staff members vaccinated who wish to be vaccinated. We appreciate that work because when I look at other states, when I look at other organizations and things, we are blessed to have two great organizations that have taken this on and worked with our crazy education schedules too, because that can be just as challenging. And then also, it just helps being in a small community where they know the value of having teachers and where we can schedule that to have the least impact on student learning. And it's been a huge, huge help for us. One thing that I will like to talk about on that special meeting in addition is if you remember back in December, we had a conversation around COVID leave and that COVID leave being extended to the end of March. We need to have a conversation as to what the board's desire is to either cease that continuation because the funding will not be existing after March 30th. As I'm aware, I don't believe there's been any new legislation at the national level to extend that. And so we need to make a decision in relation to that coming up. I did have another item on common assessment. I believe Mrs. Ochsner talked about her common assessment data, and I think that was a good illustration for this evening, as I have some stuff that I want to talk about in our reassessments, and I think that will go to our next regular scheduled board meeting and add to the discussion. That's everything that I had for my report, and I appreciate everybody's hard work and work that we've done so far.
Well, and I want to thank everybody involved in making available the vaccinations that for anybody that wants it.
We had
It was pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, we had a very interesting, we had one of our staff members contacted by public health in Nebraska just because of the close contact. And that employee explained to that public health officer, well, I'm already getting my second shot at this date. And they were amazed, like, what do you mean you're getting your second shot already? How is that even possible? Because so many other states are not to the level of where we are. And really, quite honestly, too, our county is I believe, if I remember correctly, in the top tier in regards to the number of vaccinations that we've completed too.
Does anybody have anything else to bring before the board? Not, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. No,